They called her a witch and lit the fire. Until the gunslinger rode through flames, the desert wind never rested on Frontier 9. It pushed sand like slow waves across the open plain, covering old wagon tracks and half-buried fence posts. The colony had been built to look like a western town because the first settlers said it helped them feel brave. Wood porches, water barrels, hitching rails, and a dusty main street made people believe they were tough enough to live here. But under the dust, Frontier 9 was not truly old. It had power lines hidden in trenches. It had sensors buried under the ground. It had radio towers disguised as tall, dead trees. And far beyond the town, deep inside the Red Hills, there were ruins that no one talked about. The town was called Dry Creek, and it feared the unknown more than the heat. Alara walked through Dry Creek with a hood over her hair. She kept her eyes down. She carried a small sack of dried herbs and metal scraps she used to fix broken tools. Some people said she healed machines the way a doctor healed bodies. Others said she whispered to the wind and made trouble. She did not argue. Arguing only fed the rumor fire. At the trading post, a man named Harlan leaned against the wall and watched her like she was a snake. "There she goes," he muttered to the others. "That woman is wrong." A few men nodded. A few women pulled their children closer. Alara stopped at the counter and placed 2 small parts on the wood. "I need wire," she said softly, "and a new filter for the water pump." The shop owner, Mrs. Doone, looked tired. She was not cruel, but fear lived in her eyes like a shadow. "I can sell you wire," she said. "The filter is scarce. The next supply ship is late again." Alara reached into her sack and pulled out a small silver coin. It was not colony money. It was older, smoother, like it had been polished by a river that did not exist anymore. Mrs. Doone frowned. "Where did you get that?" Alara's fingers tightened around it. "Found it in the hills," she said. "Please, my water barrel is almost empty." Mrs. Doone hesitated, then nodded. She slid wire and a filter across the counter. "Don't stay out late," she whispered, like a warning and a kindness at the same time. Alara stepped outside. The sun burned high and the street smelled of dust and dry leather. As she walked, she felt the usual stares following her back. She tried to ignore them, but then she heard the sound of a child crying. Near the well, a little boy had fallen. His knee was bleeding and the ground around him was wet. Water was running from the pump, leaking in a thin stream. His mother knelt beside him, panicked. "The pump's busted again," she said. "No water for anyone if we can't stop it." 2 men rushed over. One grabbed the handle and forced it down, but the leak got worse. Another man cursed and kicked the base. Alara moved closer without thinking. "Step back," she said. Harlan turned sharply. "No," he snapped. "You don't touch it." The mother looked up, desperate. "Please," she said. "If the pump breaks, we're done." Alara took a slow breath. She lowered her hood a little so she could see the metal clearly. The pump was old colony tech, patched 100 times. The seal had torn and the pressure was wrong. "I can fix it," Alara said. Harlan stepped in front of her. "You fix things too fast," he said. "Like you're cheating the laws of the world." Alara's voice stayed calm. "It's just metal and pressure," she said. "Nothing more." The boy cried louder. The leak kept running. Mrs. Doone came out of the store and pointed at the stream. "Harlan, move," she ordered. "Let her help." Harlan's jaw tightened, but he stepped aside. Alara knelt by the pump. She placed her hands on the base. She did not whisper spells. She did not make dramatic moves. She simply closed her eyes for one moment, listening. Under the metal, she felt a faint hum, like a sleeping animal. The planet had a voice. It was not words. It was a pulse. Alara opened her eyes and worked fast. She pulled a small tool from her pocket and loosened the panel. She replaced the torn seal with a strip from her own cloth, then wrapped the wire tight around it. She tapped the side twice, steady and precise. The leak slowed, then stopped. The pump handle rose smoothly. The mother stared, shocked. Alara stood and wiped her hands on her skirt. "It's temporary," she said. "It needs a real seal from the supply ship." The mother hugged her child. "Thank you," she whispered, but the crowd did not relax. A man in a preacher's coat pushed forward. His name was Preacher Voss, and his voice carried power in this town. "Temporary," he said loudly. "That pump has been broken for 3 days, and now you touch it and it heals." Alara's stomach tightened. "I repaired it," she said. Preacher Voss raised his hand like he was giving a sermon. "We have lived here for 15 years, he said. "We learned to suffer. We learned to wait. We learned to be humble. But she comes from nowhere, and she bends the world like it is soft clay." Murmurs rose like buzzing flies. Alara looked around. "I'm not bending anything," she said. Harlan stepped closer, eyes shining with anger. "Then explain the storms," he said. "Last week the lightning hit only the mining scanners, not our homes. Explain that." Alara did not have an answer that they would accept. She could not explain that the scanners carried a frequency the planet hated. She could not explain the old systems deep underground that woke up when she walked near them. She said the truth she could say. "I didn't cause storms," she said. Preacher Voss's face hardened. "You deny it," he said. "Of course you deny it. That's what darkness does." The mother with the child stood up, brave for a moment. "She saved my boy," she said. "She saved our water." But the fear was stronger than gratitude. Fear always spread faster. Alara pulled her hood back up and turned away. She walked quickly toward the edge of town where her small home stood, made of scrap boards and old cargo panels. The door creaked when she pushed it open. Inside, the air was cooler. A tiny solar lamp glowed on the table. On the wall hung a map of the surrounding desert, marked with careful lines and notes. Under the table sat a box of strange metal pieces that did not match colony design. Alara sat down, her hands shaking a little now that she was alone. She could still hear the crowd outside, voices arguing. She knew what came next. First would come gossip, then warnings, then blame, and after blame, punishment. She stared at the silver coin misses. Dune had questioned. It was not just a coin. It was part of something older. When Alara held it, she felt the same hum she had felt under the pump. A gentle pulse ran through her palm like a heartbeat. She closed her eyes and remembered when she first found the ruins. It had been 2 years ago when she had been walking alone in the Red Hills to gather dry plants for medicine. The sun had been setting, and the rocks had looked like burning embers. Then she had seen a thin line in the stone, too straight to be natural. She had pressed her hand against it, and the stone had opened like a door. Inside had been a tunnel, cold and smooth, lit by faint blue lines. The air had smelled clean, like rain, and when she stepped into that place, something had recognized her. A voice not spoken had moved through her bones like electricity. It had shown her images of rivers, forests, and skies full of stars. It had shown her machines that could heal land and protect it. It had shown her a warning. Strangers would come to tear the planet apart. Alara had stumbled back into the desert, crying, confused, afraid. After that day, the planet sometimes responded when she was near broken things. It was like she carried a key and the world wanted to use it. She did not want power. She wanted peace. A sharp knock hit her door. Alara froze. She stood slowly. Another knock, harder. "Open up," a man's voice demanded. Harlan. Alara's heart beat fast. She moved to the door and opened it just enough to see outside. Harlan stood there with 2 other men. Behind them, Preacher Voss waited in the street, his face tight like stone. "What do you want?" Alara asked. Harlan pointed at her. "You come to the meeting," he said. "Now." Alara's voice went quiet. "I didn't do anything wrong." Preacher Voss stepped forward. "You did plenty," he said. "The town will decide what you are." Alara looked past them and saw neighbors gathering. Some held lanterns, some held tools like weapons. In the orange light, their faces looked like masks. She wanted to run, but where? The desert was wide and her legs were not faster than horses. She stepped out of her home. "Fine," she said. They marched her toward the center of town. The meeting place was the old barn near the water tower. It had been built from shipping crates and metal beams. Inside, people filled the benches. The air smelled of sweat and fear. Alara stood alone in the middle of the floor. Preacher Voss walked to the front. "We are a good people," he said. "We work, we suffer, we share, but evil slips in when we get lazy with our minds." Alara's hands clenched. She forced them to relax. Mrs. Dune sat near the front, eyes down. The mother with the child sat behind her, holding her boy close. Preacher Voss lifted a small device in his hand, a broken scanner. "This was destroyed by lightning," he said. "The same week she fixed the pump, the same week the crops grew too fast, the same week the desert wind changed." He pointed at Alara. "Explain." Alara's voice was steady, but her throat felt dry. "Lightning hits metal," she said. "Crops grow when rain comes. Wind changes because wind is wind." A few people laughed harshly. Harlan spoke. "She lies," he said. "I saw her in the hills at night. I saw lights around her." Alara's eyes snapped toward him. "You followed me," Harlan shrugged. "We had to know." Preacher Voss raised his hand. "Enough," he said. "Truth is not only facts. Truth is the feeling a thing gives you, and she gives this town fear." That line hit the crowd like fuel. People nodded. People whispered. Fear became agreement. Alara realized the meeting was not to learn the truth. It was to give fear a reason. A man stood and shouted, "Get rid of her." Another yelled, "Send her to the wastes." A woman cried, "She'll curse our children." Alara felt her stomach twist. She looked at Mrs. Doone, hoping for help. Mrs. Doone finally stood, hands shaking. "She fixed the pump," she said. "Without her, we'd have no water today." Preacher Voss turned to her, soft but sharp. "And tomorrow?" he asked. "If she decides to break it instead, if she decides to ruin us." Mrs. Doone swallowed and sat back down. That was when Alara understood. Even kindness was being turned into a threat. Preacher Voss raised his arms. "We will cleanse our town," he said. "We will remove the source of fear." Alara stepped back. "Cleanse," she repeated. Harlan and the men beside him moved forward. Alara tried to keep calm. "You can't," she said. "This is wrong." Preacher Voss's eyes were cold. "Wrong is letting darkness grow," he said. They grabbed her arms. She struggled, but they were strong. They dragged her outside into the night air. The town had changed in a single day. The same people who had shared meals now walked like a mob. They pulled her toward the old yard behind the barn. There someone had already stacked dry wood in a circle. In the middle stood a metal post. Alara's breath turned fast. "No," she whispered. They tied her wrists to the post. The rope bit into her skin. Preacher Voss stood before her, lantern light flickering over his face. "If you are innocent," he said, "the world will show it." Alara stared at him. "The world already showed you," she said. "I fixed your pump." He turned away as if he had not heard. Harlan stepped forward with a torch. The crowd gathered closer. The night was quiet except for the wind. Alara looked at the faces around her. Some looked sick with fear, some looked excited, some looked empty. She tried to speak louder. "Listen," she said. "There are things out there you don't understand. The planet—" "Silence," Harlan snapped. He lowered the torch to the wood pile. Flame caught fast, licking upward. Heat rushed toward Alara's legs. Smoke rose into her nose. She coughed, panic squeezed her chest. The fire grew brighter, louder. Sparks flew into the night like angry insects. Alara pulled at the ropes, but they held. She shut her eyes and reached inward, not for magic, but for that hum, that pulse, that hidden system beneath the dust. Something answered. Far away beyond town, a low vibration rolled through the ground, so gentle at first that no one noticed. Then the lanterns flickered. The wind shifted. Sand lifted in a small spiral. The crowd murmured, suddenly nervous. Preacher Voss stepped back. "What is that?" someone whispered. Alara opened her eyes. Through the smoke, she saw the main street at the edge of the yard. A shadow appeared there, blocking lantern light, a rider on a dark horse. He wore a long coat like a gunslinger, but his posture was different, steady, trained. The horse moved slow, not afraid of the noise. The rider's face was hidden by a hat brim and a dust scarf. Then Alara saw the strange thing. The flames bent away from him as if an invisible wall pushed them aside. The crowd turned, shocked. Harlan froze with the torch still in his hand. The rider did not stop. He rode straight toward the fire, straight toward her. And the flames parted like a doorway as he entered the burning circle. The fire crackled loudly around Alara, throwing sparks into the dark sky. Heat pressed against her skin, and smoke made her eyes water. The crowd stood frozen, their fear now mixed with confusion as the stranger rode directly into the flames. The horse did not panic. It stepped forward calmly, its dark coat shining under flickering light. The rider's long coat moved like shadow behind him. For a moment it looked impossible, like the fire itself was making space for him. People gasped. "Who is that?" someone whispered. The rider stopped beside Alara. Up close, she saw small glowing lines across his coat and gloves, faint blue lights moving slowly like flowing water. It was not magic. It was technology, advanced, hidden under dust and leather. He leaned slightly forward and spoke in a calm voice. "Hold still." Alara stared at him. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "They'll turn on you too." "They already have," he replied quietly. He reached toward the ropes holding her. A thin blade slid from his sleeve with a soft click. One quick movement, the ropes fell away. The crowd reacted at once. "Stop him." "That's an outlaw." Harlan stepped forward angrily. "You have no right to interfere." The rider turned slowly. His eyes were sharp but calm. "No right," he said. "You tied someone to a fire." Preacher Voss moved closer, holding his lantern high. "She is dangerous," he said. "She brings fear and unnatural things to our town." The rider looked around at the flames, then back at Alara. "Fear doesn't make someone guilty," he said. He extended a hand toward her. "Can you walk?" Alara nodded weakly. Her legs shook as she stepped away from the post. The heat faded slightly, but the danger remained. The rider turned his horse sideways, creating a shield between her and the crowd. "Get on," he said simply. Alara hesitated only a moment before climbing onto the horse behind him. She felt the faint hum of energy from his coat, like a quiet shield protecting them from the fire. Harlan shouted, "Don't let them escape." Two men rushed forward, but the rider pressed a small device on his wrist. A pulse of light flashed outward, harmless but bright enough to force them back. The horse moved forward, walking through the remaining flames. The crowd parted without realizing it, stepping away from the strange glow surrounding the rider. Within seconds, they were out of the burning circle. Then the rider kicked the horse into motion. They raced down the main street, hooves striking hard against dry ground. Lantern light blurred past as the town disappeared behind them. Alara held tightly to the saddle, her heart pounding. The cold desert air hit her face, clearing her lungs from smoke. "Who are you?" she asked after a long moment. "Cale," he said. She waited for more, but he said nothing else. They rode for several minutes before slowing near a rocky ridge outside town. Cale guided the horse behind large stones where shadows hid them. He dismounted first, scanning the horizon carefully. Alara slid down after him, her legs still unsteady. She wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the shock of what had just happened. "You shouldn't have saved me," she said quietly. "They'll hunt you now." Cale removed his gloves. His hands were rough, scarred from years of work and fighting. "They were already hunting something," he said. "I just arrived at the wrong time." Alara watched him carefully. "You knew," she said slowly. "You came for me." Cale did not deny it. "I picked up a signal," he said. "Strange energy patterns, not natural, not random." He looked directly at her. "You're connected to it." Alara's shoulders tensed. "I don't understand it fully," she admitted. Cale nodded slightly. "Tell me what you do know." She hesitated. Trust did not come easily, especially after what she had just faced. But something about his calm presence felt different from the fear in town. "There are ruins in the hills," she said finally. "Ancient systems. When I touched them, something changed. The planet responds to me sometimes." Cale's expression grew serious. "Planet response technology," he said quietly. "I thought it was only theory." Alara blinked. "You know about it?" "I used to work frontier security," he said. "We heard stories of worlds built by advanced civilizations, worlds that could heal themselves or defend themselves." Alara swallowed. "The town thinks it's witchcraft." Cale looked back toward Dry Creek where smoke still rose into the night sky. "People fear what they can't control," he said, "especially when outsiders tell them to fear." Alara frowned. "Outsiders?" Cale reached into his coat and pulled out a small holographic device. He activated it, projecting a faint image into the air, a large industrial ship hovering above a planet. "Mining Corporation," he said. "They've been scanning this world for months." Alara felt cold. "They want to destroy it." "They want resources," Cale corrected gently. "But yes, that usually destroys everything else." She stared at the image. "Is that why the lightning hit their scanners?" Cale nodded slowly. "Probably. If the planet recognizes you as a controller, it might be protecting itself through you." Alara shook her head. "I never wanted power." "Doesn't matter," Cale said. "Sometimes power chooses." Before she could reply, distant sounds reached them, engines, voices, movement. Cale's head snapped toward the noise. "They're coming," he said. Alara's heart dropped. "Already." Cale's eyes narrowed. "Fast response. That means someone important wants you." He helped her back onto the horse quickly. "Hold tight." They moved deeper into the desert, weaving through rocks and narrow paths that only experienced riders would notice. Behind them, lights appeared, several riders with bright lamps chasing their trail. "Bounty hunters?" Alara asked. "Maybe," Cale said, "or hired security." They rode hard, the wind cutting across their faces. Sand flew behind them like a trail of smoke. Alara held tightly, trusting his movements even as fear pressed into her chest. After a long chase, Cale guided the horse into a narrow canyon where shadows hid their path. He slowed to avoid sound, then stopped beneath a rocky overhang. The pursuers rode past without seeing them. Silence returned slowly. Alara released a breath she did not realize she was holding. Cale looked at her again, more closely this time. "You didn't panic," he said. "I've been afraid before," she replied. "Fear doesn't help." He nodded, a hint of respect in his eyes. They sat quietly for a moment. "Why did you come?" she asked again. "Really?" Cale looked out toward the horizon. Years ago, I failed someone like you, he said. Someone connected to a world that needed protection. I left before the fight began. His voice softened slightly. I don't make that mistake twice. Alara watched him, sensing regret behind his calm words. The wind moved gently through the canyon, carrying distant echoes of the town. What happens now? She asked. Cale looked toward the dark sky where faint stars shone above the desert. Now, he said slowly, we find those ruins you mentioned. Why? Because if the mining company arrives before we understand what you are connected to, he said, this planet won't survive. Alara felt both fear and hope at the same time. She nodded. Above them, hidden satellites blinked silently in orbit, sending signals into space, signals that confirmed one thing. The witch was no longer alone. And the hunt had only just begun. The desert grew colder as night deepened. Stars stretched across the sky like scattered silver dust, bright and endless above the silent land. Cale guided the horse through narrow rock paths, moving carefully so their trail would disappear in the shifting sand. Alara sat behind him, holding the saddle tightly. Her mind replayed the fire, the shouting, the faces of people she once trusted. She felt both relief and sadness. She had lived among them for years, but fear had turned them against her in a single night. We're close, she said quietly. Cale slowed the horse. To the ruins? Yes. They stopped near a cliff where jagged rocks rose like broken teeth. From the outside, nothing looked unusual, just stone and sand and shadow. Alara slid down and walked forward slowly. She placed her hand against a smooth section of rock. For a moment, nothing happened. Then faint blue lines appeared beneath her palm, glowing softly. The stone vibrated gently and separated into two halves, revealing a hidden entrance. Cale watched carefully, impressed but cautious. That's not old colony tech, he said. No, Alara replied softly. It's older. They stepped inside. The temperature dropped instantly. The tunnel walls were smooth and curved, lit by faint glowing lines that reacted to Alara's presence. The light grew brighter as she walked deeper. Cale followed close behind, scanning everything. Feels like the place is alive, he said. Alara nodded. Sometimes I think it is. The tunnel opened into a large chamber. In the center stood a circular platform surrounded by tall structures shaped like pillars. Symbols moved slowly across their surfaces like flowing water. Alara felt a strong pulse in her chest. This is where it spoke to me, she said. Cale stepped closer but stayed cautious. What did it say? Not words, she answered. Images, warnings. She approached the platform slowly. The moment her foot touched it, the room responded. Light spread across the floor, forming patterns that looked like maps of rivers and mountains. Cale's eyes widened. Planetary control system, he murmured. What does that mean? Alara asked. It means someone built this world with purpose, he said. Terraforming. Environmental balance, defense systems. He looked at her. And you're the key to activating it. Alara stepped back slightly, overwhelmed. I don't want control over a planet. You might not have a choice, Cale said gently. The symbols changed, forming a new image, a large ship descending from orbit. Red warning lights flashed across the room. Alara felt fear rise in her chest. The mining company, Cale nodded. They're closer than I thought. Suddenly, a deep rumble shook the chamber. Dust fell from the ceiling. Cale turned quickly. Someone's outside. Footsteps echoed from the tunnel entrance. Alara's heart raced. They followed us. Cale drew a small energy pistol from his coat. Stay behind me. Several figures appeared at the entrance, silhouettes against the glowing light. They wore armor mixed with frontier clothing, bounty hunters, or corporate security. One stepped forward. Well, he said with a grin, looks like we found our witch. Cale's voice stayed calm. Turn around, he said. Walk away, the man laughed. You don't understand, she's worth a fortune. Alara stepped forward slightly. I won't go with you, the hunter shrugged. Not your choice. He moved closer, raising his weapon. Before he could fire, the platform beneath Alara glowed brighter. Energy lines spread across the floor like lightning trapped in glass. The hunters froze. What is that? One whispered. Alara felt the familiar hum rising through her body. The system responded to her fear, her determination. She lifted her hand without thinking. The lights shifted, forming a barrier between her and the hunters. Cale looked at her with surprise. You're controlling it. I'm not trying, she said. It just listens. The lead hunter frowned. Take her anyway. They fired, but the shots hit the barrier and dissolved into sparks. Kale used the moment to move. Quick and precise, he disarmed one attacker and forced another back without causing serious harm. "Enough," he said firmly. The hunters hesitated, realizing they were outmatched. A loud alarm echoed through the chamber. The system projected another image, massive mining machines descending toward the planet. Alara stared at it, fear turning into resolve. "They're going to destroy everything." Kale nodded. "Unless you stop them." She shook her head. "I don't know how." "You're learning," he said calmly. "The system responds to intention. Try focusing on protecting, not fighting." Alara closed her eyes. She remembered the vision of rivers and green land. She thought about the child she saved at the pump, the people who deserved a future even if they feared her. The lights changed again. Outside the ruins, a low vibration spread across the ground. Far away, dry land cracked open as hidden water sources activated. Plants began to glow faintly under the moonlight. Inside the chamber, the hunters stepped back in awe. "What did she just do?" one whispered. Kale smiled slightly. "She healed something." Alara opened her eyes slowly. "I felt the planet breathing." Before anyone could speak again, the hunters' communication devices beeped loudly. A voice came through. "Mining fleet entering atmosphere. Prepare for extraction phase." The hunters looked at each other nervously. The situation was bigger than they expected. Kale stepped closer to Alara. "This is only the beginning," he said quietly. "They won't stop." She nodded, determination replacing fear. "Then we don't run anymore," she said. Outside, the sky glowed faintly as distant ships broke through the clouds, their lights like falling stars. The final battle for the planet was coming. And this time, Alara was no longer just the woman they called a witch. She was becoming something stronger, a guardian chosen by the world itself. The sky above Frontier 9 turned restless. Dark clouds gathered even though the weather reports predicted clear skies. Strange lights moved across the horizon as large ships entered the atmosphere. Their engines burned bright like falling stars, leaving glowing trails behind them. Alara stood at the entrance of the ancient ruin, watching silently. The wind lifted her hair as the ground beneath her feet vibrated with a deep, steady pulse. "They're here," she said. Kale stood beside her, scanning the sky. His hand rested near his weapon, but his expression stayed calm. "Yes," he said. "Mining fleet." Several massive ships hovered in the distance, lowering smaller transport crafts toward the desert floor. Mechanical sounds echoed across the land as machines prepared to claim the planet. Alara felt the system inside the ruins reacting. Soft light flowed along the walls behind her, like the planet itself was waking up. "I can feel it," she whispered. "The planet is afraid." Kale looked at her carefully. "Already," he said. She turned toward him. "What if I fail?" He shook his head slightly. "You already survived people calling you a witch. You walked through fear and still chose to help others. That's not failure." His words gave her strength. Suddenly, movement appeared behind them. Several townspeople approached slowly, Mrs. Dune, the mother with the child, and even a few others from Dry Creek. They looked nervous but determined. Alara's heart tightened. "Why are you here?" Mrs. Dune stepped forward. "We saw the sky change," she said softly. "We heard the ground shaking, and we realized something." She hesitated. "Maybe we were wrong." The child ran toward Alara, smiling shyly. "You fixed the water," he said. "You're not a witch." Alara felt emotion rise in her chest. She knelt and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Behind them, more townspeople arrived. Even some who had shouted against her now looked uncertain. Finally, Preacher Voss appeared, walking slowly. His face looked older, tired. "We feared what we didn't understand," he said quietly. "Now something worse comes. We need your help." Alara stood, surprised by the change in his tone. She looked at Kale, unsure. Kale nodded slightly. "People can change when reality becomes clear." Before anyone could say more, loud engines roared overhead. One of the mining transports descended near Dry Creek, landing heavily and sending dust into the air. Metal doors opened. Corporate security soldiers stepped out, carrying advanced equipment. A voice echoed from their speakers. "This planet is now under corporate authority. All civilians must remain indoors during extraction." The townspeople exchanged worried looks. Alara felt anger rise. "They don't care about the people," she said. "No," Kale replied. "Only resources." The ancient system inside the ruins pulsed again. Symbols formed around Alara, floating like light in the air. She took a deep breath. "I think it wants me to decide." "Then decide," Kale said gently. Alara closed her eyes. She remembered the fire, the fear, the kindness of the child, the regret in Preacher Voss's voice, the quiet strength of Cale riding through flames without hesitation. She focused on one thought: protect. The ground shook. From beneath the desert, faint lines of blue energy spread outward like roots growing under the sand. Hidden towers rose slowly from the earth, ancient structures waking after centuries of silence. The mining soldiers paused, confused. "What is happening?" one shouted. Energy shields formed around Dry Creek, glowing softly like a protective dome. The townspeople gasped. Alara opened her eyes, feeling both exhausted and strong. "It's listening," she said. Cale smiled faintly. "You're doing it." But the mining corporation did not retreat easily. More ships moved closer. Large machines began drilling into the ground, trying to force their way past the planet's defenses. A loud explosion echoed as one machine struck the energy barrier. Alara winced, feeling the impact like a distant echo in her body. "They're pushing back," she said. Cale stepped forward. "Then we push harder." He mounted his horse again, preparing to ride toward the machines. "Where are you going?" Alara asked. "To slow them down," he said simply. "That's dangerous." He gave a small half-smile. "So was riding through fire." Before she could argue, he rode forward, moving fast across the desert. His coat shimmered as hidden technology activated, protecting him from dust and heat. The mining soldiers aimed at him, but he moved with skill, disarming machines without causing unnecessary harm. His goal was not destruction, only delay. Alara focused again. The system responded, sending pulses through the ground. The drilling machines stalled as power drained from them. Storm clouds gathered overhead, forming a natural shield that blocked the mining ship's sensors. The planet itself seemed to be helping. The townspeople watched in awe. Fear slowly changed into hope. Preacher Voss stepped closer to Alara. "I judged you without understanding," he said quietly. "I am sorry." Alara looked at him, surprised by his honesty. "I forgive you," she said gently, "but we must work together now." He nodded firmly. With one final effort, Alara raised her hands. Energy surged through the ancient system. A powerful wave spread across the desert, forcing the mining fleet's ships upward, pushing them away from the planet. Alarm signals echoed from their vessels. "Extraction impossible," a distant voice transmitted. "Planetary defense active. Retreat." One by one, the ships turned away, rising back toward space. Silence followed. The storm clouds faded slowly, revealing a calm sky. Alara lowered her hands, breathing heavily. Cale rode back toward her, dust trailing behind him. "It's over?" she asked. "For now," he said. The townspeople gathered around her, no longer with fear but with respect. Mrs. Doone smiled gently. "You saved us." Alara looked at them all, feeling something new: acceptance. Days later, Dry Creek began to change. The town rebuilt its trust slowly. The energy from the ancient system restored water sources and helped crops grow stronger. People learned that understanding was stronger than fear. One evening, Alara stood at the edge of town watching the sunset. Cale approached quietly. "Are you leaving?" she asked. He looked at the horizon, thinking. "I used to believe every place was temporary," he said. "Ride in, fix trouble, ride out." He paused. "But maybe some places are worth staying for." Alara smiled softly. The desert wind moved gently around them, no longer carrying fear, only possibility. The woman once called a witch had become a guardian. And the gunslinger who rode through flames had finally found a home worth protecting.